A judge's comment. This is a very nice image, and they'll say what's nice about the image, the backlighting, the colour, the diffused background, but they will probably end by saying the image appears to be over-sharpened. Now this is a very common comment from judges, and we don't have to be a member of a camera club for very long before we realise photographers seem prone to over-sharpening their images. So let me show you what happens when we go a little overboard with the unsharp tools in Photoshop. What we're looking at here is a pre-sized image ready for a camera club competition. So what we've actually done is to discard millions of pixels from the high resolution original. Now that's the correct thing to do under the circumstances, and in those circumstances many people like to put back a little bit of sharpness in their image, but I think this is where things go wrong. When we're going to view the image, we need to look at the image at 100% size. Now the quickest way to do that is just to double click the zoom tool from the toolbox and the picture will jump to 100%. We can hit Ctrl 0 to fit it back, double click 100%, or we can double click the hand. So let's bring it up to 100%. We can get confirmation of that right down in the bottom corner of my screen. You can see 100%. What I'm going to do is take you to the layers, because I've got two layers here. This one here is the one I've added sharpness to, and the one that's labelled background is my original. So if I turn the sharpened version on and off, you can get to see just how much damage that over sharpening does. Now I've got to qualify what I'm saying here, because you're looking at this picture through a slightly compressed video, so that's going to have an impact on what you're looking at. You're not going to see what I'm seeing here quite as clear as I am, or quite as clear as you will yourself on your own screen with your own images. But I think or hope that what I'm showing you here clearly shows you that the top image has been over sharpened. So let's drop that in the bin. We'll go back to the original. I'll double click the hand. So again, just as a reminder, what we're looking at here is an unsharpened image, but it's an image that's been pre-sized for a camera club competition. There is an old saying that I remember that says, give them an inch and they'll take a yard. Now I can't help think this every time I hear a judge say that an image is over sharpened. So what is the actual cause? Well, not to put too fine a point on it, it's you. The odd thing is, when we're talking about sharpness, is that we sharpen sharp images. We do not sharpen unsharp images, which sounds rather silly when you hear it said. But generally speaking, we cannot sharpen an out of focus image. The sharpness controls are designed to increase the appearance of sharpness in an already correctly focused image, and they must be used in a delicate way, and it's not a great step from an acceptable extra sharpness to way too much, and I guess that is the problem we're really dealing with here. Another thing to remember is that if we get the clarity and contrast right in our image, that does have an effect on making the image appear much sharper, and for some years now I've almost never sharpened my images at all. So the big question, I suppose, is why do club members fall foul of this problem so often? It's because they're trying to squeeze more sharpness into their image than is possible, and they don't critically view their image prior to putting it in the competition, so they miss the fact that it is in fact over sharpened. In most cases, the author has no idea the image is over sharpened until they see it on the screen on the night of the competition. So let's take a look at this image. This is the unsharpened version. So what we're going to do here, we're working on a JPEG image here. So let's double click the zoom tool. We can hold the space bar and we can click and drag to move the image around to an area so that we can see the part we want to view when we're going to sharpen it. Now what I'm going to do here just for demonstration purposes is to go one greater than 100% for the issues I mentioned a few moments ago, which is we are looking, or you're going to be viewing, a slightly compressed video, which is going to slightly hold back the over sharpening that we're going to view in a moment. So I'm just going to click once more and we're going to jump to 200%. So now I can move around and we'll find a little bit of the image which we're going to view. That should do it. Let's go to the filters menu and bring up our sharpen controls, and on this occasion I'm just going to use unsharp mask. Now I have a standard that I've evolved over quite a long time. Now I generally start with a percentage of 200% in the amount. Let's take the radius right the way down. With an image that has been resized, as this one has, what I find is, generally speaking, 0.3 is usually about the maximum I'll ever go to. Now I don't know if you saw the difference there, but if I hit the preview button, or the preview tick, if you look into the picture as I turn this on and off all of the time, you can see that we are gaining quite a bit of extra sharpness here. And we can see that quite clearly when we see the image at 200%. Slightly less clearly at 100%, but we will be able to see it, especially when you're looking at it on your own screen. So there's no sharpness, there's the sharpness. Now if we look, let's look at one particular point. If you look at, I've taken the sharpness off. If we just look into the center of the frame, you can see that little twig there which has got a white edge to it. When we over sharpen, that white edge is going to get stronger, and that is a dead giveaway. But you can see even with a marginal amount of sharpness we still get an increase to some degree. So on this particular image, it may even be one of those images where I may drop down to 2.5 or even 2, and I would be checking by ticking and unticking the preview. Now you can see the difference is very marginal at all. So at 3 we can see it clearly, at 0.2 we can hardly see it at all, which really suggests let's put something bang in the middle then. And untick the preview. So there is the maximum sharpness I would put into this picture. I'm going to do that, and I'll hit Ctrl-0 to fit the image on screen. But then I'll double click to look at this at 100% size, and I don't think we're going to be accused here of over sharpening the image. So there's no mystery to sharpening an image, and really we've got to use our eyes and our judgment to squeeze what we can into the picture, but not to overdo it. And if you have to make a mistake, then make a mistake with less sharpness rather than more. Now I put many images into Camera Club competitions, and if you watched our introduction you would have seen most of those displayed and the marks they gained. Not once have I ever been told my image isn't sharp enough, or it's over sharpened. And I don't believe I sharpened any of those images, even though I pre-sized them obviously for the Camera Club competition. There may be an odd exception when one particular image can take a little bit of extra sharpness, but more often than not these days, if I get the contrast, the clarity and the tonal range of the image correct, in more cases than not, I don't think I need to sharpen the image, but if I do, very, very marginally. Now of course we can sharpen images in Adobe Camera Raw if you wish to, and if you want to do it you have some quite neat controls to enable you to have control over the sharpness. But the thing we must do is the same as we did in Photoshop, and that's to double click the zoom tool and get the image to 100%. I'll hold the space bar, click and drag, and we'll get a part of the image which we can evaluate. And then we can go to the options to select detail, and we can look at masking the image here. Now if I hold the Alt key and click the mask, you can see what happens. As I move the mask slider to the right, I can determine how much of this shows black and how much shows white. It's the white areas that are going to be sharpened and not the black areas. Now the black areas in this case are going to be the water, and if we were looking at the sky, I'm going to suggest the sky is also probably going to be black. Which is right, because if we were going to sharpen this image, we don't really want to put extra sharpness into those even-toned areas like water and skies, because that is where any hint of over-sharpening is going to be seen first. So once I've got my mask to the position that I want it, then I can use the amount much the same as I've been using before. But you can look up the technical ways these work on the internet and read to your heart's content, and you can sometimes fill yourself up with too much information. I think the best thing is to use our eyes basically. And if we take these sliders to the right and sharpen an image, use an on and off little tip here. Hit the P key, and that will take the sharpness off and on. In fact, it takes all of the settings that we've put in this picture on and off. But what we can do is look at just this area around here, say, and we can make a judgment on how much sharpness we feel we can squeeze into that picture. There's the P, and there we come back. Another option is just to double click the slider. That way all the rest of the changes we've made to clarity and contrast will remain, and just the amount will be taken off. So there you can see how the image goes soft and a little bit sharper. But what we've got to do is to balance this one and this one. We can always drop the radius down. We could push this one up to its maximum and maybe use this like I said before. But the difference here, of course, is we're sharpening a higher resolution image. So we've probably got the ability to go a little bit further than we would have normally gone with an image we've pre-sized for a competition. But once you've got your settings in place, double click the amount and you can see the before and after. But the simple fact is, err on the safe side. In Lightroom it's much the same. On this occasion though, let's crop the image for the Camera Club competition before we start to apply our sharpness. So let's go to the crop overlay, and from the options here I'm going to choose my 16:9. Let's say that is the crop that I want, so I've just cropped that down to quite a small size. I can go to my 1:1 option here and then use the little square over here to pull this around into an area where I can make a judgment, and that looks pretty good. In the Detail tab in the Develop module, now we can look at exactly the same settings that we looked at a few moments ago. So there's the amount, and there we can see the sharpness being placed in there. Double click, look around this area here as I push this up. Can you see some noise starting to appear? Well, that's a sure sign that we're probably going a little too far, and I'll gradually bring it back, on and off. Now you can see that in some places I'm getting a nice effect on the stone, but I don't think I would go much further than the amount of 63. So I've taken a marginal amount of sharpness which I'm going to accept, but not too much. Again, err on the safe side. When we fit this back on screen, of course at that particular size, and this is part of the problem perhaps, then we don't notice the sharpness anywhere near as much. If we sharpen the image until we could see the image sharpen here, imagine when it's 6 to 8 feet across in your club room on the screen.